It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them, so thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is CEO Ryan Fishoff. Ryan is a 2006 graduate of Boston University with a finance degree. He started his career working at Liz Claiborne in a variety of divisional and corporate analyst roles, including the DKNY Jeans brand. He transitioned to the world of private equity with CoBe Capital, a family investment firm focusing on acquiring non-core subsidiaries from Fortune 1000 companies. In 2016, Ryan took over Gents, a men's accessories brand, and in 2017 brought that brand into American Premium Water, where he is CEO today. Ryan Fishoff, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
How wonderful to have you here. We kind of like to start with the early years. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what your early family life was like.
Sure. So I was born in New York City, and New York City has been a very big influence on my life, even though I didn't live in New York City for very long. I lived in Tarrytown for a few years, then also moved to Denver, Colorado, a suburb of Denver, Colorado, and then moved back to the east, basically following my dad's corporate journey. And then we settled in Fairfield County, Connecticut. So first Westport and then Southport, Connecticut.
All right. Nice area. What type of work did your dad do?
He was an executive for a number of consumer products companies, but
got it.
Primarily he worked for Bristol Myers Squibb for 27 years in a number of different finance capacities, and then was the CFO of CoBe Incorporated for 6.5 years, and then held a couple of other COO/CFO roles with some smaller consumer brands in the latter years. So it's
kind of went into the middle market a little bit.
The middle market, right? So it's been a heavy influence on my professional career.
What about mom? Was she stay at home, or did she also have a career?
She was a stay-at-home mom for the most part. She definitely worked a few jobs here and there to stay busy. But
brothers and sisters?
I have one younger sister. So she's actually 6 years younger than me. So it's an interesting dynamic, I think, because I was an only child for 6 years. So I've read a lot about because I have a lot of tendencies of an only child, even though I'm not an only child. But.
Right. No, I know that's like I'm kind of the same way, although I'm the back end. My older brothers are 7 and 10 years older than me, so kind of grew up that way as well. But it's interesting to have those relationships. Tell us a little bit about some of the influences that your mom and dad had on you growing up. Lessons learned, that kind of thing.
Sure. I mean, it very different in the sense because, my dad was working a lot. So especially during the week, he wasn't home a lot. My interaction with him was just, pretty much at night when you come home from work. And he worked in New York most of the time, and then, moved to Connecticut, his office. So it was a little more, a little less work time. So I think it was, different. It was more like weekend pieces of wisdom or late night pieces of wisdom while I was doing my homework for my dad, and my mom was sort of there during the week. So I think I learned a lot from both their life experiences in different ways.
Any specific things that you can recall from those early days that mom or dad shared with you that maybe has had an influence, on your life today?
I would say, I don't think there's anything in particular. I don't think there's any anecdotal pieces of wisdom they passed along. I think it's just general I just think being around them kind of rubbed off on me in different
Family
ways.
Model and so forth.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I mean, there's nothing really I can really point to or recall. It's like, little pieces of wisdom. But I mean, certainly, I think just, like I said earlier in the like when I said we grew up with even though we were living in Connecticut, I do feel that the New York influence is very important in my life.
Spent a lot of time there.
Spent a lot of time in New York. My parents are from the city. My mom's from Queens, my dad's from Brooklyn, so it's different perspectives. And I was always raised with that mentality. So it's a very different mentality than like growing up in the suburbs or even Connecticut per se. Being in Connecticut versus like Westchester or Long Island, it's a different mentality when you have their life experience, especially like, I think it was, I was always self-aware of, I guess, or I was more aware of others that, I tried not to take for granted what we had, because my parents didn't really, neither of them had lived in a house up until I was
Yeah,
two.
always apartments. Yeah.
It was apartments. So like that whole aspect of like, having the space and everything, it's just, I have an appreciation for that.
Any other influencers in your life? Was there a special uncle or aunt or maybe a coach or a teacher at school?
I would say my grandparents were very influential for me.
Both sides?
Just my dad's parents. My mom's parents were deceased before I was born. So, but my dad's parents, they were very impactful in my life.
So were they living nearby?
Yeah, they were living in a half hour away in Westchester. So we'd always go there, and they'd come visit with us, and it was they were very they had a very, very influence even to this day on me. I would say outside my parents, they're the most influential people in my life.
Were you a good student?
I was okay, actually. I think I always did well enough to get by, but I never I only pushed myself in the courses I really liked. I didn't put the effort, or I put the effort that was needed to just get a decent grade. But to really achieve, I never had the best GPA. I mean, it wasn't terrible. And I went to Boston University, so obviously I didn't do too bad, but definitely didn't. I probably underachieved, I would say, in high school.
What were some of your favorite subjects, the ones that you did well in and enjoyed?
I would say all my American Studies classes, I was very good. And I remember, like some of the law classes, I was very good. I just got it. It came very natural to me, and I just had a comprehension. And like in class, like I can talk very well, but I can articulate myself very well. Also writing as well. So those are the classes that emphasize that, and I just did very, very well, and it just came very naturally to me.
I'm sure that served you well in your business career as well.
Yeah, math, some of the mathematics. I would say algebra, I was pretty good. It was when we got to like calculus and like chemistry, I just did not understand, and nor did I care to, because again, I was of the opinion that I'm not going to be a scientist.
Yeah, what's the relevance, right?
What's the relevance of being calculus? Like this is, to me, it didn't make sense, and I didn't want to, like, again, it's like a perfect example of something that, like, yes, if I really applied myself, I probably would have been okay, but I didn't put on that extra gear, because I didn't say, what's the point? And I also liked TV class, believe it or not.
Cool.
I did film, and I really liked that aspect of things too, but I made a decision, I would say, like, when I was going to college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, that, I mean, I didn't think I didn't have enough confidence in myself to be a filmmaker, because I knew a few other people who were doing it, and I'm like, they are really good. And I'm not going to be a director. It's like, I don't think I have that talent or drive to want to do that. So
public high school, private school?
Public high school.
Yeah, that's nice. They had a film class.
Yeah.
These days, those things have mostly been eliminated, unfortunately.
I guess actually it's crazy. This fall will be the 20 years ago I was going into high school. So it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but
right,
I guess Yeah, I mean, it wasn't anything crazy. We just had some basic camcorders. It was in our library, in our audiovisual department. It was a lot of fun, and it definitely gave me some, it definitely helped build skills because I took a marketing class too my senior year, and I took some of those film skills and I just put together a great presentation. And I took a marketing class, and it just came so naturally to me. I was like, this is, and like some of the stuff my teacher was saying, I'm like, no, this is wrong. I like was like, no, like I even knew. I'm like, okay, I mean, maybe that's kind of the edge that I have that like
Yeah.
that fuels me as more of an entrepreneurial side. But
What about outside of class? Anything sports, music, theater?
yes, so I was big into sports.
Yeah. What kind of sports do you play?
Played football. I played basketball. I played baseball for a little bit, and then I played volleyball actually.
Ever any ambition to do that at the college level?
I did. So I didn't love football. I mean, I had offers to play football in college,
Oh,
and
cool.
I just didn't want to because I knew the commitment and everything, and I just didn't love it enough. And I mean, if I could have had my druthers, I would have played college basketball, but I wasn't that good. I wasn't good enough to play. I mean, to play college basketball. I didn't have the athleticism that was needed. Um, so actually, I went to BU, and then during my freshman orientation, I got recruited to row, and I was on the freshman crew team for a
Yeah,
semester.
great. Cool. Great sport. My daughter rows at Dartmouth.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so I rowed at Dartmouth. My first race was at Dartmouth, actually.
Oh, excellent.
And it
Cool.
was freezing. I remember it
Yeah.
was.
The snow leaves the Connecticut River very late in New
Yeah,
Hampshire.
I know, it was crazy. It was late. It was like October, and it was snowing, and it was so cold. I never and like rowing, if you don't wear gloves, so
Yeah,
your hands
right,
get freezing,
right.
and it was an interesting sport. I thought it was a crazy sport that I could just like kind of be pulled off the street, and I made the number one freshman boat, and I was
Awesome.
like, this is kind of crazy. And and I was with kids who actually got recruited to row, and actually one of the kids I rowed with ended up being a 3-time Olympian, and
Wow.
he won 2 gold medals in one in Beijing and one in London.
Wow. Fantastic. Did you row all 4 years or
No,
just the freshman year?
I just
Yeah.
did the freshman year because it just, again, this isn't that thing where I didn't love it, and it
It's a
wasn't.
huge time commitment.
It's a huge time commitment, and it just wasn't what I wanted to do. It just kind of something I stumbled into, and it's like I just don't. To me, it's not worth. It wasn't worth it to me. So I quit after my first semester, freshman year, and then I ended up playing volleyball
Okay. Cool.
at BU, and I had a great time, and it was, it fulfilled my competitive nature, and
Great
but
sport.
I also made some great friends. I'm still close with many of my teammates who are actually spread across the country, and it's cool. We see each other like once a year, and it's we keep in touch, and it's great. So that was a very, very good decision. Or
Tell us a little bit about maybe some of the entrepreneurial things you were involved with when you were younger. Any, paper routes in New York City probably didn't take place, but you would have had them out in Connecticut. Were there things that you did growing up?
I didn't have. It's funny. So I didn't really have. It's like it was like in me the entrepreneurial bug, but it really wasn't. It didn't come to the forefront because like
Did manifest early?
it didn't manifest early because the people. I guess I've learned later in life. I've seen in terms of it's the people you're around. So I mean, my dad was in the corporate world, so that didn't really. He's become more entrepreneurial too since, and I think it would have cultivated itself. And the internet was just starting, but like none of my friends were doing anything. There wasn't like that in my DNA to push me, and I hadn't like really asserted myself. I mean, high school's a funny time. You're still like figuring yourself out, and doing sports and everything. And I definitely had it. Looking back, the seeds were there. It's just they hadn't been planted yet. And
So did you work some part-time jobs or anything like that while going to high school?
no, I didn't. Football, sports was my job.
Yeah, they took up a lot of your time.
Took up a lot of my time. I committed myself very hard. That was something I probably committed myself more to sports than I did to my schoolwork. I'd probably be the first to admit that.
Was it kind of assumed that you'd go to college? Obviously, I think your dad did. Did mom as well?
It was. It wasn't just assumed. It was
Preordained.
Preordained. Yeah. There was never.
And why BU? I mean, great school, and obviously not too far away. But was there a specific attraction as to why you went there?
I'd always wanted to be in a city. Being in a city. I knew from early on that I wanted to have a city environment, and I pretty much looked at places in the East Coast that were in cities in Washington, D.C., Philly, Boston. Those were pretty much the places.
Boston's a great town, great college town.
Yeah, and I went and visited a few times, and I was like, yeah, this is a good place. This is good.
Right. What did you study in college?
Finance.
Finance, okay. And was that kind of, again, preordained or something you just expressed an interest in or found your way into?
It's something I just kind of figured gave me the most optionality. It was a very practical decision because I wasn't sure what the path would be going forward, but I made the decision. I was like, okay, if I get a marketing degree, that only limits me to marketing jobs. But if you get a finance degree, they don't necessarily discriminate you of having a finance degree where you can still get a marketing job if you have a finance degree. So
right.
I just thought that was the most open-ended thing, and and it was a good program. We learned I learned a lot. I mean, the thing about college, especially undergraduate, is that it's just a foundation. And you learn this, you don't realize this then. I learned this now looking back, but really it is. It's just a foundation of your foundation building blocks. It's the work experience that really builds your career. It's like, I know people get hung up on the fact that, oh, you went to this college or that college, but I mean, it doesn't. After being in the workplace for 5 years, it shouldn't even matter.
What was that first job you took out of college?
So I worked for. Well, actually, I hung around Boston for a little bit and did commercial real estate. Actually, that was in 2006 when pre-boom things were percolating. I was trying to figure out. I knew I wasn't gonna stay in Boston for very long. I was just trying to stall for time and just figure out what I wanted to do. My first real, I would say, corporate job was working for Liz Claiborne.
Liz Claiborne, yeah, we covered that in your. Was that down in New York?
That was in New York.
Yeah, got it. And you went into some sort of analysis role then, or financial analyst?
Yes, I was a financial analyst at the corporate level as well as on the divisional brand level.
Did you move into some leadership responsibilities pretty early on, or?
My first day, they didn't have. So Liz Claiborne was an interesting experience for me because. At the time, I mean, the economy was still doing very well, but that company, unbeknownst to me, was kind of the canary in the coal mine to everything. And they had been covering up a lot of internal issues through acquisitions. So at the time I joined Liz Claiborne at the end of 2006, they had over 40 brands in their portfolio, which a lot of people didn't realize. So they owned Juicy Couture, Lucky Jeans, a number of other brands. And, Juicy was very hot then. And they were just covering up, they were masking because they were just, as I've learned since, masking some of the structural flaws in the business with these shiny acquisitions. But you can only do that for so long. So my first day so there was a lot of internal reorganization. So my first day on the job, I didn't have a boss per se. My direct report was the SVP of finance for a large division, almost like a divisional CFO, because they didn't have anyone, they hadn't hired or moved anyone to be my boss. So the person who was training me was actually an analyst or senior analyst for another brand. So my first day, they put me in the leadership meeting for DKNY Jeans brand, and and the DKNY Jeans brand was a $250 million business when I was there. So it was a very eye-opening experience that I'm 22 and they're looking to me on my first day like, okay, what's going on here? And there was a pretty cutthroat team of sales and fashion executives.
Were you managing people in that job?
No. Well, yes and no. Because in the finance world, the finance world there's a lot of, it became clear to me very quickly that there's a lot of internal power, even though you don't have title power, there's internal powers being in finance. So that
sure, you control the numbers.
Right, exactly. So I held a lot more swag, so to speak, than I think I even realized then, or the perception. And it was, very, I would be talking to people, and again, I go back to when I said only child. It was never a problem for me dealing with people who were older, and that's what helped me. Where I was. Because it wasn't weird for me to be talking to people 20, 25 years older than me, and I didn't feel inferior to them.
Do you remember the first time you started managing people directly?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of my first job, well, before college, my first job, actually, my first real, I guess, official paid job, I was a summer camp counselor. So you're managing people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Any early leadership lessons that you derived from that?
Yeah, there were a lot. I mean, I think you
What were some of what were two or three of them?
I would say the biggest thing I learned was you got to be yourself.
Yeah.
Because you can't try to, I think you can definitely use anecdotal things from like other people. Like I certainly used experiences because I went to sleepaway camp as a camper. It's the same place I went as a camper. And I tried using what the counselors that I remember being good and try emulating them. But at the end of the day, you have to be yourself and just take those guidelines or tips to guide you. You can't try to be them. You have to be yourself and just use what they kind of taught you and apply it in your own way.
So you were in the corporate world with Liz Claiborne, DKNY, before you went into private equity. How many years did you actually spend in that corporate environment?
2 years.
Any best or worst lessons you took from previous bosses there? You don't need to name any names.
No. I would say the Liz Claiborne experience was very hectic. So like I said, there was the company went through a transformation, and then I would say 6 months while I was there, they started announcing that like they had a miserable earnings report, and then they announced they started selling brands off, and it just was like a tailspin in the company. I would say through my 2 years there, I had 5 different bosses, direct bosses. It was crazy, and it was a very hectic place, and it was just like I was very frustrated. I mean, I would say the best thing I learned there was what not to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, what were some of the worst lessons that you picked up, or good lessons that are behaviors that you wouldn't repeat elsewhere?
Just in terms of how they dealt with things in terms of on the corporate level, because it was a very split culture there, because you had the New York office and the New Jersey office. The New Jersey office was like kind of the back office with all like the like the true accounting functions, or the AP and AR and IT in their corporate headquarters or the corporate campus in North Bergen, which is just right across the river. And then you had the New York side, which was more the fashion side was, but also we were there because we were on the divisional level. So there was also a split between the corporate finance team in New Jersey and then the kind of the back office corporate side, and then there's the front office side like us. So that in itself was interesting. I picked that up. There's that cultural difference, and that's the classic suburban versus urban mindset. And then also there was also the just in terms of how the company was run. It was even as someone fresh out of college, there was so much mismanagement and so much waste. Where they were stuck 10 years past. Like their IT systems were not well done. There was all these pointless calls and meetings where I just would sit there and we'd waste an hour, and I'd just be sitting there just with something that could have been done over email or just a phone call.
Right.
Even some of the phone calls we did was just like we were just repeating stuff that's on a piece of paper that, like, if there was any issues, it could have been done offline, where we could just say, okay, here's the report, and if there's anything that's variance to the report, please speak to me off email, or
if not, let's get back to work. Right,
exactly. And it was like I just learned so many things what not to do in a company.
So you went into private equity, I think, following that, right?
Yeah.
And how many years did you spend in that industry, that sector?
6.5 years.
Got it. What was the attraction to do that? Was it kind of your entrepreneurial self coming out, or?
Yes. I working very early on at Liz and spending late nights. So, I mean, one of the things that really frustrated me was we spent an inordinate amount of time working on the financials, and uploading the financials was like a torture because the IT systems were all out of whack. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm here at 9 o'clock at night because we've had the financials done for 2 hours, but we can't upload it into the system. It's like, this is dumb. So it's like, I want to be working for I'm putting all this effort in, and it goes back to like when I was younger. It's like, if I'm putting all this time and effort and energy into something, I want a piece of it. I want to
get your return.
Get my return. I won't be able to function. I will not. This is where I need to be, because I won't excel in that environment, because I just will be like, I'll be disinterested, and it won't work for me.
And then after your PE work, you went into becoming obviously a CEO and a founder. Was that one of the companies that you had nurtured along during the private equity days? No?
No. Gents was something, it was, again, the private equity firm I worked for, we didn't really do, unfortunately, consumer products, but I really learned how to run businesses and turn around businesses. It was a very good education for me. What
were some of the key lessons that you took away from those 6.5 years?
Really, because we worked in a small office, so even though I wasn't a senior partner, but my boss there would say you'd have to be dumb not to learn something. If you don't learn anything here, you're just dumb, because we were exposed to so much, and I did a lot, and I participated a lot on the transactions. It wasn't like I just sat around and did nothing, but one of the transactions we did, I went and I was the transition team, which was great. That was a great experience. Certainly learned about managing people in terms of also on the corporate hierarchy, in terms of how things need to be managed, especially when you're bringing a new cultural shift, because you're a change agent, and I think you learn people are naturally adherent to change. I'm the same way. It's kind of funny. Like, we work as a change agent or in a turnaround company, but when myself sometimes is slow to adapt. That's just our human nature.
How would you say your leadership style has kind of evolved over the years from, obviously your early corporate period, the 6+ years in private equity, and now with not one but two startups, or it looks like, Gents, you kind of folded into American Premium. Is that correct?
Correct. It's something I'm still, grasping with. I'd say communication skills have improved in the sense that, or I'm constantly more aware of it and working on it, where you need to be very, especially in a startup world, you need to be very, very clear with the people who work under you. And
how big a team do you have now?
I would say between both coasts, like 10 people. And we're bi-coastal, so it's a very interesting atmosphere where Gents and American Premium Water. And that was one of the thesis is combining, consolidating our back-end operations, our logistics and warehouse, because at the end of the day, whether it's hats or water, my shipping department, it's the same thing. When they're shipping to someone or through Amazon, it doesn't matter. It just weighs something and you put it in a box. So even though there's that, so I think that's another challenge inherent of itself, is that I'm not there managing the day-to-day. I'm here in New York. They're out in LA. I go there frequently, but I'm not there on a daily basis. So that also adds another degree of difficulty of communication and having to be.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on building a company culture, particularly when you're a small group like that, split, by 3,000 miles?
I think you have to. It's about the people you have to adapt a little bit to the people that work for you, because you're not there, so you can't. As much as we all say about, the leadership starts with the top. In this instance, I have to kind of work around them, unfortunately, just because, unfortunately or fortunately for them, or however you want to view it, just because I'm not there to, impart on it. So I can set up processes, all I want, and that's great. But at the end of the day, that's partially on me too. So it's like I have to set the tone, but at the same time, there's a lot of things I'm not there setting the tone. So it's like something I have to adapt to, and that's something that, it's kind of like it's always an evolving process, I would say. It's not something that, is ever set in stone. So I think from, a traditional standpoint, a traditional management or leadership standpoint, it's unique. But I think this is where, companies are evolving. As I think telecommuting becomes more, work from home becomes more prevalent. I think this is something that, more people will be dealing with.
What would you say is unusual or unique about your company culture at Premium Water?
I would say the fact that we're so spread out is that the CEO's in New York, our founder and chairman's in Miami, and our operations are in LA. So we travel a lot, and it's also, I would say it's unique is that, we're a public company, we're a small cap company, and yet, we're still kind of in the startup phase, even though or Gents is somewhat of an established brand, but it's still a small brand. It's still an established brand or a startup brand. And
what do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire?
I think, I like to look for someone who has good social skills or good people skills. I would say not being robotic. I think a lot of people, I had the chance to interview a lot of people when I was in my private equity role. And, it's something, something you learn. You just can't, do interviews over time. It's like you need to like just kind of get a feel for them if they're reading off a script or they're just robotic or trying to say the things that you want to hear versus the things of how they really are. And it's not easy because sometimes, the people who read off a script are telling you what you think they want to hear, they're good. And maybe that's not a bad thing either because if they can adapt to a situation. But I think you really just need to get a sense of, where's people's mindset lies and where they are.
If you only have about 5 minutes with someone, what do you kind of focus in on? What do you ask them?
I would say, and it's kind of a dark thing to say this, but essentially, if you only had 5 years left, what would you want your obituary to say? Not like 5 years from now where you want to be, because I think that's be in this company. Because I think it really pushes people to say, okay, I have 5 years left. What would I really want to? And it really just it kind of shocks people.
Interesting. Yeah, I like it.
And
what kind of responses do you get?
It really opens. People are pretty startled when they hear that. but it's a crazy thing. People open up because it takes it out of the whole sphere or specter of I want to be this company.
Standard questions.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
People. It really opens up really what they want to do. Because it's just like, it kind of gives them some, it gives a lens of finality where it's like, okay, I only have 5 years.
Cool.
What do I really want to do, or how would I want to be perceived? So, and I think it's interesting. I think how people react to it is interesting.
What are some of the more interesting responses you've had from that question?
I remember one person said that they would hope to become like known as an avid outdoorsman or naturalist. I was like, okay. So that's completely out of not what we're talking about here. And another thing I used to do too, and I don't think this was a thing for a little bit. I think they've kind of regulated this, but I used to ask, would you let me have access to your Facebook account?
Right.
And I never wanted to, but I just wanted to hear what people's responses were.
Right.
Because I could tell how
people would kind of like chill up, their eyes would get wide, right?
Yeah, because
I'd tell you your answer right there.
And to be honest, I would say the people who said no, I wouldn't give you my Facebook account, those are the people I'd want. Because that's something that I don't believe that it should be the company's. It just shows me that they're not a corporate. They're not completely, they have some moral compass or some level of, at least that's how I look at it. I mean, some people would want the other way, completely subservient or whatever, but I don't think that should be, your best employees shouldn't be completely subservient. They should want to work for you.
Man.
Yeah, you don't want yes men. I don't believe.
Did you have people that would respond? Oh, sure. Here's my password. Go take a look.
Yeah. I was like, no, thanks. I just wanted to ask. I didn't care, but
yeah, interesting. Yeah,
that was also another
questions.
thing that I felt that was I don't think you can do that anymore. This was I would say 6-7 years ago. I don't think that's a thing anymore because I think there's been some policy about that, or it's kind of evolved. I guess many true HR people would chime in on that, but
right. Well, Ryan Fishoff, you've been very, very generous with your time. We do have one last question that we always ask all the CEOs, and specifically, that's what career and life advice would you give to someone that has their eyes on the corner office, or perhaps wants to be an entrepreneur like yourself?
I mean, I know this is kind of rote or hackneyed, but you have to love what you do because you spend so much time and energy and effort. And if you don't love what you're doing, if you don't have a passion for it, it's just not going to work. And a lot of people say that, and I know that from firsthand experience. I think that's the best. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this because it's such a sacrifice. I couldn't tell you the number of sacrifices I've made. Personal relationships, financial family. It's just a lot of things I've definitely sacrificed and neglected for the companies. So it's like you
got to really love it if you're going to give up that much time and effort.
You got to really love it and be committed. Otherwise, what's the point?
Well, Ryan, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Best of luck with continuing to grow American Premium. I've really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.